we are like plants. They have a light cycle and a dark cycle, and you have to respect circadian rhythms. So the sunshine and then the sun is down, and we've evolved around that. And your cells repair during the dark phase. And part of that repair requires restorative deep sleep. And you have to foster that sleep. And it could not just be how many hours you have, but how deep and what brainwaves you get into during that time. And that requires a strategy.
Welcome back to the Holistic Health and Hormones podcast, where we explore the deeper connections between your body, mind, your long-term health, so you can optimize your hormones, your fertility, and overall well-being. Today's conversation is a powerful one because we're diving into something that goes far beyond just living longer. It's about how you age and the quality of your life along the way. I'm joined by Dr. Jeff Gross, a board-certified neurological surgeon turned longevity and regenerative medicine expert. After decades in spine surgery, Dr. Gross shifted his focus towards something many of us are now starting to question. Can we actually slow, optimize, or even reverse aspects of aging at a cellular level? Through his work in biohacking, regenerative medicine, and his company ReCELLebrate, he's exploring cutting-edge approaches that challenge the traditional model of waiting until things break and instead focus on proactive, preventative, and deeply personalized care. In this episode, we are unpacking what longevity really means, what's actually happening inside your body as you age, and how this all connects to hormones, fertility, and your long-term health. So if you've ever wondered whether you can truly influence how you age, or you're ready to take on a more empowered approach to your health and wellness, this episode is for you. So let's dive in. Hello and welcome to the Holistic Health and Hormones podcast. I'm super excited to have Dr. Jeff Gross today with us, who's graduated from the University of California, Berkeley, with a degree in biochemistry and molecular cell biology. He earned his Doctor of Medicine in 1992 from George Washington University School of Medicine. He contributed to virology research during his studies and after graduating completed a residency in neurological surgery at the University of California, Irvine Medical Center in 1997. He then pursued a fellowship in spinal biomechanics at the University of New Mexico until 1999. Licensed in California, Nevada, Dr. Gross has spine practices in Orange County and Henderson, Nevada. A trained neurological surgeon, he specializes in athletic injuries, spine procedures, and offers longevity and biohacking consultations. He's certified by the American Board of Neurological Surgery and is a member of several prestigious surgical societies. And since 2020 is a top doctor recognized by Dr. Gross as a leading neurological surgeon. He also received Health Tap's 2022 Top Doctor Award as a top neurological surgeon in the US. And Dr. Gross founded ReCELLebrate, focusing on anti-aging and regenerative medicine. The mission for ReCELLebrate emphasizes modern biomedical treatments and considering surgery as the last resort. I'm so excited to have a chat with you today, Dr. Jeff.
Thank you very much for having me. It's great to talk to you and your listeners.
Yeah, you come with a long list of qualifications, specialties, and I'm such a passion for really health, hormones, and longevity. So, how did you come across this particular area of work? And basically, if you want to explain to listeners, what does longevity actually mean to you to just actually live? It's not health span, it's not lifespan, sorry, I should say, it's more health span. So what is your take on, the work that you do and why is it so important in this day and age?
Well, the first question was, how did I get here? And I was minding my own business, practicing neurological spine surgery and taking care of lots of neck and back problems. And surgery was always last on my list. I'm probably the least surgical surgeon out there. But it was my patients who came to me over the years looking for additional non-surgical options because there was a large gap between sort of physical therapies and epidural injections and anti-inflammatory medications and then surgery being next on the menu. So my patients were savvy enough to say, well, I still have issues. Those things weren't working, but I'm not ready for surgery. And I said, great. I didn't want to offer it to you. So there. So we were always thinking of new things to try. And, a lot of them would say, hey, doc, how about stem cells? I hear those are
Yeah.
cool, and there's sort of a buzz phrase. Luckily, chance favors the prepared mind. And I had that background in biochemistry and molecular biology, which covers the topic of stem cells. So I said, a lot must have happened since my undergraduate days, my baccalaureate days. So I went back 1 year instead of going to the neurosurgery conferences, I decided to go to a stem cell conference, and I retrained and retooled. And I was going to add this as a new thing to offer my spine patients, but it has blossomed into everything I do now. So it's blossomed into joints and IV wellness and anti-inflammatory approaches and longevity. But you're right, when we talk about longevity, it's not just so you can live to be 120 years old and you spend 30 years in a nursing home. It's
Yeah.
it's for a full quality, healthy longevity. Fill that longevity with healthy, independent, mobile, cognitively rich, socially rich years. And as you mentioned, we call that health span. So that, even though we throw around the word longevity,
Mm.
we mean a special kind of longevity, the good longevity, the
Yes.
healthy longevity.
Yeah. I mean, now with science moving the way you're saying, like it is possible. And I'd love to hear your take on sort of what the new research is with stem cells. And there's that buzzword stem cells. And I think with science moving the way it is not impossible for people to live long and healthy lives well beyond 100 years of age. But like I said, it's quality of life. And that starts from, I guess, earlier on. But now with science moving the way it is, how is that helping to improve people that obviously didn't have a great head start, but can catch up sort of with improvements to their health and well-being later on
Yeah.
in the years instead of focusing on surgery? Because as a surgeon, most people just want to, they see something wrong, they just want to cut things out. But there is obviously side effects and long
Mhm.
recoveries with surgery. And if we can
Right.
avoid surgery, which I'm all for, then it is always better for the patients
Right.
themselves.
I agree with you completely. So yeah, science has been improving for decades. It's
Mm,
not just recently. I think the other thing that helps open this up is, we're squashing some of the political obstacles, the economic obstacles here
mm.
that allow that science to be applied. Because a lot of the research that we have followed and apply in our clinic is 20 years old,
Yeah.
and it's from Europe or Asia, and the United States is late to the party. I know where you are, it's very restricted, and that's not restricted by science. That's restricted by
Politics.
governments and politics and big pharma's long reach, economic reach,
Mhm.
and not just
Mhm.
big pharma, but from my side of things, big implants. The people who make knee
Yeah.
replacements and spinal screws and rods and things like that. So those tools are necessary. They'll be there,
Yeah.
but we shouldn't reach for them so quickly.
Mhm.
So I think that is it's not this is not a an application for the future. It's an application for the now, but you have to seek it. You have to have an appetite for it as a patient. You have to be seeking the alternatives, and you have to find a clinician that's open-minded enough that put down the Kool-Aid and went and relearn
Mm.
more natural techniques, how to apply regenerative medicine, which is stem cells and
Yeah.
stem cell signaling called
Mm.
extracellular vesicles or exosomes, and peptides, which is cell signaling also. All these things work together or can be work together to help influence our cells in ways we want. Some people call that biohacking,
Yes.
tricking our cells. And it's not a bad word. It just means it's a strategy.
Mm.
It's like eating healthy is a strategy. That's biohacking.
Yeah.
So see,
Yeah.
it's not a bad word.
So with that, you mentioned a lot of peptides, and I know that's a new thing that a lot of people are getting into. Can you explain a bit about peptides and when we should be starting peptides? And is it for anybody? And can they start at any time?
Yeah. So the first thing you said, you mentioned that peptides are new. No, I think there's a resurgence
Mm.
and renewed interest and a bigger popular interest. They've been around forever. For example, insulin. Insulin is a medicine for diabetes. It is a peptide. So they're not new. We're identifying newer ones, and new applications to signal our cells. So peptides are small protein fragments, everyone. Um, most of our functioning in our cells and in our body are done by proteins. Enzymes are proteins. Receptors are proteins. Most neurotransmitters have a protein element. So muscle is a protein. Tendons are made of cartilage proteins. Hair is a protein. I mean, we could go on and on, but we really are proteins. And proteins are molecules that have nitrogen at their core. So, you've probably heard science fiction people say, oh, we're a carbon-based life form. No, we are a nitrogen-based life form. And just like plants, they are nitrogen-based life forms also. Carbon is useful. We use a lot of carbon. It's how we store energy. Sometimes too much of a storage and fat,
Yeah.
right? So that's kind of the overall science of peptides. And now we can use them therapeutically. We can use them instead of medications. Most of them are naturally occurring in our body. You just need a little extra here and there. You asked, when do you start? It depends. What issues do you have? What goals do you have? So healthcare doesn't have to be just about your needs. It can be about your desires. I want to be healthier. I want to have more muscle. I want to live longer, healthier.
And what are most people getting wrong about anti-aging today, do you think? Are they starting too late? Are they what are some of the things that you've seen when people are looking at misconceptions or what they're particularly doing that is leading to a poorer sort of lifestyle and things like that?
It's never too late to start. Of course, the earlier you start and the more you do over time, which we call the area under the curve, or for those math nerds out there, the integral of that, you get a better result. So it's never too late. And, this is about an appetite for this. So, longevity medicine you might be things you're already doing or something your grandmother told you to do, It could be as simple as, getting a good night's rest.
Sleep is important. I think most people underestimate the power of sleep, right? And, with screen time and working late and on computers all day, it definitely affects people's circadian rhythm and that. Let's talk quickly about sleep. How are you seeing that affecting people's aging? And obviously, a lot of people now are just spending way too much time on their screens and not thinking that sleep is important.
Yeah, I mean, we are like plants. They have a light cycle and a dark cycle, and you have to respect circadian rhythms. So the sunshine and then the sun is down, and we've evolved around that. And your cells repair during the dark phase. And part of that repair requires restorative deep sleep. And you have to foster that sleep. And it could not just be how many hours you have, but how deep and what brain waves you get into during that time. And that requires a strategy. And that strategy is letting the brain relax and tune down the neurotransmitters that are active, in the evening. So if you're busy watching television or, on your computer, playing games that involve screens, you're stimulating your retina to think it's daytime, and your daytimes are artificially longer than your nighttimes, and you're not getting enough dark stimulation in the retina, and therefore your neurotransmitters are in the pro-inflammatory mode because during the day we are inflaming, and during the night we solve that inflammation. And if you don't have adequate downtime and repair time for your cells at night, you're not solving all that inflammation. You're accumulating more chronic inflammatory cell stresses, and you're aging faster. That's what aging is. Inflaming. Inflammaging is a
Amazing,
word someone came up with, which describes it well.
So, from a cellular perspective, what actually drives aging? And does aging actually start from 21? Like, what have you seen? Like, you hear things that, like, from 21, we start to age and go downhill. Women are sort of even, around that 21 or even 30, sort of age. And I work a lot with fertility and hormones. And as soon as people get to 40, they're freaking out, all this sort of perimenopause. But from your perspective, from a cellular perspective, what is actually driving, the aging process?
As I said, inflammatory stresses from our environment, even self-inflicted ones. It could be bad things in our food source, our water source, our air, pollutions, microplastics. It can be, how our hormones are affected by microplastics and other things, or estrogens for men, these pseudoestrogens that are out there. It could be trauma, it could be psychological trauma, neurological stress, and there's a lot of it. not enough sleep. I mean, all these things, they start in your childhood potentially.
Yeah.
Yes, we stop sort of a lot of cellular divisions and stem cells and growth kind of phases out in the early 20s. I think that's what we're referring to here, but you can start aging if you're eating poorly and you're not exercising as a child, you're aging. You're starting that inflammatory burden early.
Because there are now assessments and things you can do to check, key biomarkers and indicators when you're looking at someone's biological age versus their chronological age. There's testing like true
That's
age
right.
and different sort of biomarkers, which is assessing the rate of aging. Can you tell us a bit about sort of what the science is around testing for biological age and other markers that people could be looking at in terms of basic assessments to see where they're at? Because when people see numbers, I think it's a lot more of a, reality to go, okay, something's got to change, right? When you go, oh my gosh, I'm 50, but my body's like 70, right?
Right. No, I mean, the old school way is you look at someone, see how many wrinkles and gray hairs
Yeah.
they have, and say, "Oh, you look like you're 70." But there's a way to look at the cellular age, and like you said, there's a calendar age. You're 70 on your 70th birthday. We
Yeah.
can't
So,
change that. But when you look at 2 70-year-olds, one might look youthful and plays tennis and
mm,
has glowing skin and a full head of hair and a great attitude, and one is, got a cane and can barely walk and has to
yeah.
sleep a lot, has grayed and wrinkled and really looking for a retirement home. They're born on the same date,
Yeah.
but one has aged faster than the other because of the cellular accumulation of inflammation. And that can be measured through biomarkers. And that's a biological age test, not a calendar age
Mm,
test. And there are a
mm,
couple different kinds. There's some that look inside the nucleus of the cell, look at telomere length
yeah.
and DNA methylation. There are some that look at markers in the bloodstream called, glycans, basically sugar molecules added that get appended and gunked up on antibodies. And what they do is they take healthy populations and know what 30-year-olds look like, 40-year-olds, 50-year-olds, 60-year-olds, how they should look. And then some random person sends their test in and they do the result. They say, okay, you match up with a 37.5-year-old.
Mm,
And if you're 50, you're like, oh, that's great. But if you're 20, that's not great.
yeah. Yeah. There's a lot to do with genetics. Like, I think it's also epigenetics, like you said, right? We can be given good genes or we can be given terrible genes, but what we do with that and our diet, lifestyle, all of that is definitely contributing to how quickly someone is aging.
Oh, we now think, and we used to think oppositely, but we now think that it's the lifestyle or what's called the epigenetic influence
Yeah.
that has the predominant influence on how we age, how fast we age, how much inflammation, what pathways are being activated in the cells, which ultimately is what's going on. So, epigenetic, for those of you who don't know, means the influence what genes you call upon, because your genes are the same. You have the
Yeah.
same book, but what pages are we going to read from, right? Are we going to read from the happy pages or the
Mm.
inflamed, cranky pages?
And what can people do to help that? And I just want to touch on, like, obviously mitochondrial health, where, that is important to longevity. Can we talk about how we can improve mitochondrial health, how that is contributing to our health and wellness and, and our lifespan as well?
So mitochondria are sort of a cell within a cell. It has its own DNA, has its own mitochondrial plasm, juice inside. It serves as a battery. It has a different electrical charge inside and outside. And that's really where a lot of the power work is done. Of course, we learned in high school it's the powerhouse of the cell making
Yeah.
ATP, but and most of the energy is produced there. Krebs cycle, or what we call TCA cycle, that's where all the NAD plus is produced. That's where your B vitamins are acting for the most part in this cytochrome. So we know that light and energy and things affect your mitochondria. And if you take care of your mitochondria, you really take care of your cells, and then you take care of yourself. So a lot of biomolecular medicine now is focused on the mitochondria, and rightfully so. So certain supplements, like the blue dyes and the light energies, the infrared lights, all these things are working at the mitochondrial level.
And even certain supplements, a lot of the sort of ubiquinol, CoQ10 that we hear about, people love taking NMN and NAD at the moment, as well as peptides and a few others that you've mentioned, thinking, well, obviously it's helping to somewhat extent in sort of, their energy and also improving some of the cellular structure and longevity. So what is your take on NMN and NADs?
Well, this is very controversial, but you do need these nicotinamide molecules in your mitochondria. Turns out it's very difficult to take NAD plus orally, so you can do IVs or injections. NMN orally gets converted, but it's hard to get that into the cell. Turns out nucleoside riboside, or NR, is probably the best way. But you also have to make sure you have the right B vitamins, that they're methylated if you need help methylating them. Some people have
Right.
a gene
Yeah.
deficiency where they need help. You got to get a methylated form, which is, by the way, the natural form. Citrus fruit makes B vitamins methylated. The synthetic vitamins in a bottle aren't necessarily methylated, so you have to buy them that way. I think all those things contribute to mitochondrial health. There are so many things we're now looking at mitochondria quite a bit, because so many unexplained diseases turn out to be mitochondrial diseases. And in fact, we're seeing a lot of people with energy deficiencies, brain fog problems
Mm.
since COVID and COVID vaccine, because the spike protein is damaging to the
Yeah.
mitochondrial membrane. So you have this leaky battery. It can't
Mm.
maintain a charge, can't
Mm.
start your car.
There's even some people, they're like you said, they're sleeping like 9, 10 hours and still waking up super tired. And just sometimes changing, they're putting more B vitamins and methylated B. And I see that with a lot of my fertility and women's health clients, is like
Yeah,
sometimes recurrent miscarriages or even, hormonal health. Soon as they have some good B vitamins, some good B12, methylated folate, hugely improves their hormones and their conception chances for sure.
that's right. See, prenatal vitamins aren't just for the health of the baby, it's to get
That's
the
right.
mother ready and get the mitochondria ready. But you
Exactly.
know what? We're using a lot of peptides now for mitochondrial repair. This has been a huge, huge advancement in the last year and a half, at least in my practice. Seeing a lot of people just run down, and we're able to repair them. And all this ADHD and ADD that we see, at least here in the States, a lot of that turns out to be mitochondrially involved. We could take these kids off medicine, and even adults off medicines that are stimulants, by repairing their mitochondria.
Because that's a big thing. If they're on medication, which is sort of masking it, but then it's having a lot of side effects, if they can naturally improve that without being on meds, I mean, it's a big part of sort of the Western culture is a lot of them, they go to the doctors and they just want to medicate. Or like you said, surgeons want to just cut so quickly without what can we do that is less invasive and has longer,
Right.
longer benefits for sure. But with
Absolutely.
the
This is
aging,
this
yeah,
is this is the sick care model, right? It's very reactive, and yeah, they want a quick fix. Give me a pill.
which is not fixing anything. But do you think we
Correct.
can truly reverse the aspects of aging, or are we just slowing it down? Or is that actually going into reversal from what you've seen?
Oh no, it's reversible. I mean, you can't reverse yourself back in the calendar,
Yes.
but you can reverse the processes at the cellular level. We have examples where we've regenerated cartilage in people and regrown hair and improved skin quality. That's a reversal.
So, what is the most effective biohacking strategy that you're currently using or recommending? So, peptides is one. What other sort of effective strategies are you currently, sort of using on your clients?
Well, my focus is regenerative medicine. That's sort of the last you know battleground for what we're doing. We start with the basics first. So, on the basic level, I'd say diet, management of diet, and what your nutrition is probably a big one. Sleep is another. On the high end, it's peptides and stem cell based biologics. We call those biologics, but it may not even be stem cells, because we now learn that stem cells, even though that's the buzz phrase, stem cells actually don't do the work. They deliver the work.
Mm.
At the end of the day, any type of stem cell therapy that you may have, your cells do the work. Your cells
Yeah.
are encouraged and signaled by what the stem cells deliver, these exosomes or vesicles and proteins and peptides and growth factors. They flip our cells into this from a chronic inflammation mode into a optimal functioning mode or anti-inflame mode. And they can go back to doing what they did when we were younger, more restoratively.
Mm. Mm. I mean, that's a role of usually the peptide stem cells and that regenerative therapies. And so, when should someone consider sort of these more they're not technically more advanced, but, these sort of alternative therapies or a more natural form of therapies?
Well, you start with the basics, right? You do
Yeah.
the cheap and easy things first. You sleep right. You focus on it. You make a plan. You exercise properly. You get your diet in order, your nutrition. You avoid toxins. Could be smoking, could be drinking, could be living near a high electrical power lines, high field
Mm,
lines, different things. It could be stress. You may work for someone who's a tyrant, and you should maybe change that. So there are many different easy things you can do.
yeah.
And then you do testing. You look at blood labs and see how you feel. You correlate those, have your doctor correlate those, and if those aren't enough and you're still suffering from feeling older than you are, which is one of the intake questions on our in our clinic, how old are you, how old do you feel?
Mhm.
so
Mm.
so
Yes.
it gets to give you a sense of how someone's doing right there. And then we move into the peptides and regenerative space as a more advanced. So your question was, when do you do that? When everything else has failed that
Right.
you can do, that's less expensive and free and easy, and you know,
So the easy things people don't do, right? Even drinking water, sleeping right. It's
yeah,
part of daily life, but yeah, they're not prioritizing that.
right,
How closely linked sort of, I would say that, fertility, I want to just touch on sort of hormones and
yeah,
things like that, but declining fertility markers, right? Reflecting sort of the accelerated aging, because with a lot of the work I do, soon as people get to 40, their egg quality is starting to decline, and sort of looking at how they can slow down that sort of perimenopause and menopause happening in sort of that early 40s even. Does that start early on in the 30s, or,
yeah,
is it not too
oh
late
yeah,
to be working on that in the 40s?
oh yeah. How you feel now is based on how you behaved the prior decade,
Yeah, that's
what
true.
you ate the prior decade. Yeah, you have to do the work, and
Yeah.
it's an investment. You're investing in your future. How do you want to feel when you're 70? Well, you got to do the work now.
And it's a lot, right? A lot of declining fertility markers. I think a lot more people either perhaps are marrying a lot later, they haven't looked after their health. So when they're trying to have a baby in their sort of late 30s, early 40s, most people I see are between 40 and 45. And there's huge issues. And so IVF is usually the first option, because they're like, oh, you're 40, the only option is IVF because your eggs are, not viable anymore, or they're going through multiple rounds. And so, yeah, I want to sort of get that message out that longevity and sort of aging, you should be looking after yourself in your 20s if you're wanting to sort of have that healthy reproductive age, and perhaps maybe start a family a lot later.
I could not agree more.
So what roles do sort of the hormones play in, like I said, that sort of lifespan versus health span? So we are talking about sort of even after menopause or just around that sort of 50s, what can people be doing, sort of looking at that they weren't doing sort of in their 30s and 40s? How can that sort of change for men and women, I think, sort of
Oh yeah,
especially for women after menopause, because things start
yeah.
really declining very quickly.
Oh, absolutely. Women are harder hit because it's so
Yeah.
abrupt. But yeah, bioidentical hormone optimization is a key element of slowing cellular decline, slowing inflammation. The pathways in our cells are highly dependent on these steroid or sterol based molecules. They are DNA transcription, cofactors and promoters. So they do affect what genes are called upon. They are epigenetic. So if you don't have them, then you're calling upon cranky old genes. So you want to call upon the
Mm.
younger reparative genes. You need to maintain, as early as any decline is noted, your hormone levels, and that's not just sex hormones. And people also, testosterone is for both sexes, estrogen is for both sexes in some ways. So even though those sort of get assigned by gender, they're, a woman should have an testosterone of 50 or so, and men should have an estradiol of 25. It's protective. So these are important things to consider on a plan towards longevity, and test your hormones early in your 40s.
Mm. Yeah, it's very important. And just even that stress, and like I said, people going through the changes in their hormones. And you mentioned a lot about sort of stress and even the emotional health playing on longevity, which, that needs to be addressed even early on if they're looking at sort of that longevity and just wellness really into our later years. So, what sort of excites you now about the future of this sort of field? I mean, there's so much shifts happening in terms of technology, science. What is really
Yeah.
exciting you about the future in the next sort of 5 to 10 years?
Well, we're heavily focused on learning more about how mitochondria respond to energy,
Mm.
light,
Mhm.
sound, different types of energy, and combining that with the biologic side, even though energy sort of transmits into the biologics. We, as I mentioned earlier, stem cells work by delivering these cell signals called vesicles or exosomes. We're looking at more tissue specific exosomes, neurologic stem cell exosomes, skin exosomes. We have natural killer cell exosomes, which is part of the immune system for patients with cancer. Pairing that with the right new peptides. So there are tons of peptides that are just not yet available. So we're pushing for those peptides for cancer, peptides for mitochondrial health, for other issues. I think we will in the next 5 years or so the broadening of what's available, the democratization of that, the access. We really need to open up. We need to tell big pharma, no, you're not the only source of things,
Mm.
and that requires a groundswell of people.
Do you think that there will be changes in even cancer treatments and how people can detect and possibly, with all of the sort of science, be able to overcome a lot of the cancer
Oh
treatments
yeah,
without sort of, yeah,
oh yeah.
side effect
We're,
chemo?
we're catching them earlier through what we call liquid or molecular biopsies, and we are able to address them in a more natural way without maybe chemotherapy, without necessarily radiation. So there are growing options for less invasive things. There's such a knee jerk, for example, to have a mastectomy for women.
Yes. Yeah.
And really, there are so many better options. They have something now called cryotherapy, where they
Mm.
put a needle into the mass, and it internally turns it very cold. It freezes it to death, that mass, for a centimeter or two, and then that tissue's dead. So you've had a functional lumpectomy without surgery.
Mm.
So there are so many things out there, and you need to be a good consumer. You need to do your homework and
Mm.
research it,
Find the
and
right
don't
doctor.
don't rely on 1970s technology for a 2026 problem.
I think it's also finding the right team, the right doctor, like people like yourself who are moving forward with science and really utilizing all options and sort of moving towards a world where surgery is the last resort. Because, like I said, people, they get the blood test back or they get their genes and they're like, oh, you've got the BRCA gene or whatever else. And even celebrities are making it popular by just cut off the breast to, prevent things. But it's not until, like I said, if we can treat things early with the right tools, we're moving towards a world where hopefully surgery
Yeah.
is going to be the last resort.
Yeah. No, I mean, I know a lot of people that do the preventative prophylactic mastectomies, and maybe
Mm,
there's a better way, or maybe our screening tools are better. So if something pops
yeah.
up, you can deal with it without having to remove a large part of you. So that it's of course it's a personal choice. I'm not going to twist anyone's arm to do one way or the other, but there are options,
Yeah.
and people should know that.
Because even some of the old mammograms, I was talking to a client who's been, sort of diagnosed with breast cancer, and the old mammograms where, going to the screening and they're just pressing on your breast and things like that. Where now, with imaging and, like you said, different types of screening tools, I mean, we don't have to be stuck in the same way we're looking at medicine as we did sort of, 40 years ago.
Yeah, mammogram is a dying technique. Just there's the same thing here. If you go into the emergency room with back pain, low back pain, they take an X-ray, and really the yield of those X-rays is incredibly low. So everyone's coming in for a dose of radiation. You know,
Yeah, it's not great. So tell us a little bit about ReCELLebrate. How is that different from conventional approaches and sort of, yeah, what all of that is about?
well, I think I've surely laid sort of the menu of what
Yeah.
we do at ReCELLebrate. But ReCELLebrate is the name of our practice. We named it that because we celebrate the renewal of cells,
Mm.
which is sort of this anti-aging and regenerative approach. But your cells do the work, so we help you get there through advice. Most of our patients are not here in Las Vegas; they are remote by video. We can order tests, labs, MRIs, what have you. I do a lot of spine and joint injections with regenerative biologics and peptides. So we only invite people here to town if we need to do a procedure. and people don't mind coming to Las Vegas. Even you've been here, like you said,
Yes,
so come on back.
exactly. People travel anywhere in the world now for good doctors and good therapies. I hear people going to Mexico or even Europe for great doctors and great programs that they can't
Yeah,
get in their local country.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
what's something in mainstream medicine that I guess you strongly disagree with, or that's a huge misconception out there when it comes to aging?
Well, I mean, more granular with the joints, people get these repetitive steroid cortisone injections,
Oh,
and
yes.
they help in the short run, but they actually accelerate the degeneration. The other thing is, I think there's way too much reliance on MRIs. You see these, oh, you've got bone on bone. Turns out some people
Yeah.
have knee problems that have nothing to do with that. So they end up with surgery they didn't need. And then guess what? They're not better. I think
Um,
there's, way too much reliance on anti-inflammatory pills.
yeah.
You know, here we had this whole conversation about slowing inflammation slows aging. Why can't we just take a handful of anti-inflammatory pills? Well, that only shuts off one pathway in the cell, and the other pathway, how cells work. You shut down one, the other ones rise up to
Yes.
compensate. So it actually works against you, and of course, you can damage your kidney and with those. And even cause cardiovascular issues. So I think there's a lot of that. You go into the emergency room, you get this kind of knee jerk. Here's an anti-inflammatory. Here's a pain pill. Get out of here. So I think that there's a better way for many things. There's an option, and there could be a natural option based on biology.
That's the thing. I think even here, they're very big on cortisone injections. So I've had clients who've come in frozen shoulder, knee pain, whatever, sort of pain they've got, and they've had 2, maybe 3 cortisone injections. Might help for that short term. So obviously it may take the pain away for 3 to 6 months, if that. And then afterwards, it's not doing anything. Well, the second cortisone injection hasn't done much for them, but they're not being told of the side effects. Then they're like, well, what next, right? And if it's not surgery, then,
Hmm.
they're really stuck at the moment.
Yeah, and there's a role. There's a role. If you can't walk, your
Yeah.
knee's swollen. Okay, you may need a cortisone injection,
Yeah.
but it's not a long-term repetitive solution.
Yeah. So, are there any sort of longevity trends that could be actually harmful out there, or if sort of sort of people who are on, social media, TikTok and YouTube are sort of going out and then going to get peptides? Like, people go, "Oh, I'm on this peptide. What do you think of this peptide?" And
Yeah,
they're kind of doing their own research. Well, not really. They're kind of, "Oh, this is a new thing. I'm going to try this." Is
yeah,
there anything sort of harmful that can come from people that are
yeah,
doing their own biohacking in a way?
yeah. I mean, listen, some of the peptides you could hurt yourself.
Right.
I love the democratization. I love the energy. We would not be, having this sort of groundswell of public promotion without that. But you got to be careful. Some of the muscle gaining peptides that help release growth hormone, you can hurt yourself if you take too much of that. The GLPs, if you take too much, you can hurt yourself. You could lose too much muscle. I mean, there are a few of them you have to be super careful with. Some of them probably not going to get in too much trouble. But it's really good to get some clinical guidance. Okay, here's one. Here's how long you take it. Here's a good dose for you. Try it at a lower dose. Work your way up. I mean, there's some coaching I want to give people.
Yeah.
So we do a lot of that for the peptide side.
And is that more a customized thing? Obviously, with peptides, it's looking at
Yeah.
all the things. And so, what do you need to be on? What sort of peptides? How long? What the dose
Oh yeah.
is? It's best to work with people instead of people just buying stuff online that they think, oh, this is the best peptide, but they're not sure if that's the right peptide for them and their cells.
Right. It's good to get advice, and I realize that there aren't many peptide doctors out there. So please find someone, and I know it's hard to get where you are. And I think I just saw on social media like a group got arrested for supplying peptides, and
Oh, wow.
yeah, in Australia. So I don't know what for your listeners down there, but here in America, they're available, and in Russia they're abundant. These
Yeah.
Eastern Europe, some places in Europe struggle to get them, but they're potentially very useful, and it just makes sense to have clinical help
Mm.
looking over your shoulder.
Definitely. So, if someone wanted to start sort of optimizing longevity today, what are the sort of, we mentioned some basic free things, but what are the
Yeah.
top 3 things in your mind that they should start on? Sort of, yeah. I mean, it's better late than never, but what are some
Yep.
of the
Yep.
things that they should start looking
Uh,
at straight away?
use your muscles. well. Use them
Exercise
hard,
daily?
use them intensely. A walk is nice, good getting your steps in is nice, but you really have to stress your muscles
Yeah.
and then they will grow, and that's your longevity organ. So intensity exercise, lifting, resistance exercise, especially
Yes.
for ladies maintaining bone density, you have to maintain your bone density, you have to maintain your muscles, both correlated with longevity, healthy longevity. So
Mm.
exercise, exercise. Now we talked about sleep. I won't reiterate much, but restorative sleep, not just sleep. And three, diet. You really have to dial that in. Eat eat the earth, eat healthy, avoid the
Mm.
pesticides organically. Eat your fruits and vegetables, get your phytonutrients. And I'm a meat eater. I believe in that. I have
Yeah.
patients that are vegetarian and vegan as well. It's very hard for them to get enough protein. So you got to make sure you're maintaining protein. Your muscles will not grow and they will
Yeah.
shrivel away faster if you don't have enough protein. So protein, protein, protein.
Yeah, and sugar, I guess you mentioned sort of even like I'm always telling clients like sugar, processed foods, like they're huge. And we are so exposed to EMFs, toxins, so minimizing all of those sort of
Yes.
estrogen and toxins. But what does your personal longevity routine look like? Love to hear sort of,
Oh,
what
yeah.
you're on, what you're doing to keep young, because you look fairly young.
Thank you. Appreciate that. No, I mean, so I get up early. We exercise hard.
Mm.
At least 3 days a week. We walk twice a day. We have a dog, so we have to, which is
Yeah.
great.
A
The
good
the
thing.
dog
Everyone get
takes
a
us
dog
for a walk.
then.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we love that. So we try to get the steps in. We take the stairs always.
Yes.
So we avoid elevators and escalators and people movers at airports.
Mm.
We always walk. I have a weighted vest now, so when we go walking, I wear a weighted
Ah,
vest so I can get extra work. We have dumbbells in our living room, so if we do decide to watch a little television, we might be doing some arm exercises,
nice.
or squats or what have you with the weights. I intermittent fast. It's not for everyone, but I'm. It's very easy for me. It comes easy to me, so I do not eat until lunch every day.
Mhm.
I try to end my eating at dinner, although every now and then I need a little something an hour later. But I usually eat in a 6 to 8 hour window in the day. Um, so I believe in that. We take supplements, but not too many. We take definitely melatonin at night. That's a missing hormone that even if people think, oh, that's to help you sleep. Yes, it is, but it also helps your cells repair. It's an antioxidant hormone. I understand it's tough to get where you are for some
Need a
odd
script.
reason.
Yeah, need a
It's
script, and
crazy.
it's a big thing
Yeah.
now with fertility, right? That's why a lot of the women are on sort of
Yeah.
2 to 4 milligrams,
Yeah.
a night, especially in their 40s to help with equality. Yeah.
But the problem is oral melatonin just doesn't get great absorption. So
Right.
I do a sublingual. Uh,
Right.
so that might be an option. I try to eat a lot of protein. I do protein shakes during the day, very low sugar,
Mm.
high protein. These are prepackaged. We could just buy them now. I don't have a
Yeah.
blender in my office. That's a mess.
Yeah.
We drink hydrogen water. I say we because my wife does this with me. So we drink hydrogen water. When we're drinking water. We've been cooking more these days. You get those organic
Mm.
sets where they send you all the ingredients and you cook it up. So
Mm.
that who's got time for the store, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But that doesn't mean every now and then we don't have a slice of pizza or something. If you're eating well most of the month, you can have some gratitude and some relaxation. We try not to be too overly stressed. I use the sauna at the gym. Uh,
Mm.
Hot, Finnish sauna, not the infrared. It's not hot enough. Let's see what else to do. I'm sure we have these purifiers in our shower heads, so
Yes. Yes.
remove some stuff from that. We've removed most of our plastic out of our lives. We have
Yeah.
glass everything, glass
Yeah.
or ceramic.
Yeah.
In fact, my wife just saw a biodentist in Europe who removed her root canals
Yeah.
and all kinds of stuff, doing a complete biologic overhaul. And I know I'm just scratching the surface here because it's
Lots
a
of little
routine
things
now. It's
to
easy.
do. Yeah, yeah. Even heavy metals, like you touched on a couple of things, like water that we didn't mention. And I think water is so important. People like I've got a 6-stage reverse osmosis machine, and plus it's got like a sort of pH filter which produces alkaline water. And water is a big thing because people don't realize, especially the pipes in Australia, the pipes are filled with heavy metals. They're very old, and so sometimes not filtering. People think if I just boil the water, it's enough, but it's not. There's a lot of heavy
Yeah.
metals in water, and it's so important, especially if you're drinking 2 to 3 liters a day. You've got to make sure you have good
Yeah.
quality water
Yeah. That's
and
true.
shower. So, yeah, lots of little things. And I think it's just the daily habits that sort of build
Yeah.
up. People think, I'm not seeing the difference, but, each sort of year, each decade, it compounds later
Yeah.
for people, doesn't it? And it all starts with all the little things that we're doing day to day. So, look, I'd love to continue talking, but if you could give one piece of advice to, I guess, someone who wants to just not just live that little bit longer, but better, what would that be? There's so much advice you've already given, but what's your sort of one important thing?
Exercise hard. Use those muscles. If you take care of your muscles, they'll take care of your mitochondria. They'll take care of your bone density. It'll cause you to eat better because you'll crave better. It'll cause you to sleep better. So
Yeah.
I think exercise is sort of it has relations to all the other elements in the all the things your grandmother told you would be healthy.
Because I think these days we live such a sedentary lifestyle. Like I said, most of my clients don't exercise. There's some that are the hardcore power exercises. Like I just came back from the gym just before our call, but I will do like 6 days of exercise. But most people are sitting all day. They go, I don't have time to exercise. But it's the opposite. If they had more time to exercise, their life, they would have better, better sleep because they're so tired. And so it's this sort of vicious cycle that we
Agreed.
see. So it's almost
I
starting back on basics.
completely agree.
Awesome, Jeff. I'd love to keep talking. There's so much. We'll have to get you back on for more things to chat about. But thank you so much for sharing, your advice, your wisdom. And yeah, I've got the links for people who want to reach you and find out more about what you do and how we can all live to 120.
At least, yes. Do the work and you'll get there. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jeff. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of the Holistic Health and Hormones podcast. I hope this conversation has opened your perspective on what is truly possible when it comes to longevity, aging, and taking a proactive approach to your health. Not just for today, but for your future. Because the truth is, longevity isn't just about adding years to your life. It's about adding life to your years with energy, vitality, and a body that feels supported at every stage. If this episode resonated with you, I'd love for you to share it with someone who needs to hear it, and I'd love for you to leave a comment. And if you're ready to go deeper and want a more personalized support to optimize your hormones, fertility, and overall health, you can book in with a free fertility focus call or contact me on social media. As always, thank you for being here, and I'll see you in the next episode.